give me the rundown of like what I need to do to improve water, have water, like the importance of water.
Water to me is one of the most overlooked habitat attributes out there.
What would be like your recommendation, first thing to assess when you're looking at the swamp and how to make that healthier?
My biggest thing is going to be looking at, all right, what kind of habitat is present and what can we do to manipulate it?
Guys have talked about EHD with your pond problem.
As long as you're maintaining and taking care of that food chain and ecosystem, you're not going to have the midge issue. Actually, having a tank, if you don't clean that, you could actually now bring in Salmonella, E. coli, Leptosporidium, all these different pathogenic bacteria that can also harm your deer and kill them.
Well, I'm excited, Zach. Thank you for being here. And I'm excited to talk to you today about all that you have going on with your products and stuff like that. So if you wouldn't mind, if we just kind of jump in, if you would just, normally we just kind of get going and steamrolling and see where it goes, but just to kind of introduce yourself to our listeners, who you are and what you got going on.
Yeah, so name's Zach Haas. So I own and operate a land management company in Wisconsin called Creek Bottom Land Management. So I've been doing that for 10 years. And prior to that, though, I was actually an aquatic biologist for nearly 20 years. So I was managing ponds and lakes, streams, reservoirs, you name it, across pretty much the entire Midwest. And as that got more heavily regulated, that's why I dove into the habitat world and kind of brought the niche into water, into habitat, because people talk food plots, they talk mineral, they talk feeds, they talk PSI, but no one was really talking water. So I brought that aquatic biologist aspect into it, and that's been a roller coaster bringing that water aspect into it.
Yeah. So what was the whole deal with? Why'd you get out of kind of the biologist side of water?
Every year the regulation just kept getting worse and worse and worse. So they were like I was a commercial applicator, so I was doing pesticide applications, all that kind of stuff. But like our state of Wisconsin, we really started restricting what we could do, how we could improve water bodies, different things. And honestly, the public sector just started getting so kind of a pain to deal with. So like even like, let's say if I wanted to take care of someone's pond, they have algae or they had invasive species, it would be like a 4-week turnaround for me to even get a permit to even take care of that pond. So like just dealing with all that, it was just kind of got too much where I was like, all right, I'm done with the regulation. I'm done with the DNR. And so now I'm back into more private sector work and dealing with actual landowners, which is kind of what I started doing with the aquatic biology side of it in the first place.
So that way you can just throw out the regulations and work right with the landowner.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it's just tough. Like it got to the point where we were constantly having a lobby even to keep some of our products to actually improve water, or they were trying to restrict certain products that were not even pesticides. And honestly, kind of in a way going at the landowner himself saying, no, you can't use this stuff. You can't do this. And almost taking away all the power from the landowner and from us as an applicator and we have our licensures. We had annual licensures, 5-year certification, degrees, all this stuff. And we were just starting getting more and more handcuffed each season. And to me, it was like, oh, this is kind of a pain if we can't actually do our job and actually protect and fix these ecosystems, then why am I doing this in the first place?
Yeah. Right on. So as you've morphed into the deer habitat world, which you've always been in, what is some of like, if you were somebody who's like, all right, tell me, like, give me the rundown of like what I need to do to improve water, have water, like the importance of water on a hunting property?
Yeah. So really when it comes down to it, I mean, water to me is one of the most overlooked habitat attributes out there. Cause when we really think about it, we kind of got told the myth years ago that deer get most of their water from forage, which if that was the case, well, then obviously they would starve and die and be thirst deprived when it comes to rut, when they lose 28% of their body weight. So they have to drink. That's just no different than us. If we were thrown into the Sahara Desert, we have to drink, right? We're going to die. So a deer needs anywhere from a gallon to a gallon and a half of water a day. Well, I can tell you that's a lot of buds and a lot of leaf litter if they're going to get a gallon and a half of water a day. So they'd still need water on that property to actually drink, survive, and thrive. And the other part of it is this kind of goes into even like the livestock world, but if water intake drops, it directly correlates to actually forage uptake. So if they're not drinking, they're not going to eat as much either. So now you're going to have unhealthier deer. So to me, water is the pinnacle And it's so different than us, right? What are we told? Drink water. If you want to be healthy, drink more water.
You're 75% water. Yeah, you got to need more water.
As I'm down in a big gulp of coffee. But
well, my wife always says for every cup of coffee, I have to have like 12 more ounces of water. So like that's what I've been doing.
Drink water.
I don't. That's what she says to me all the time. She goes, "I don't think I've ever seen you drink water."
I don't drink water.
I did drink 2 big, huge things of water before we started. So like if I run off to go to the bathroom, Zach, that's what's happening, and that does happen from time to time in the podcast because I'm like a messed up human where like everybody else like wants to carry their water bottle all around all day and just like just drink it. Where I'm just like, I'm going to chug 2 glasses in the morning, chug 2 at lunch, chug 2 in the evening, and that's how I tried to roll. But it just doesn't work with the bladder. Sorry to derail it, Zach. Keep going.
So I got a question. No. So when you talk about water, are you this when you talk about the health and water and deer, are you saying is there a way to make normal water healthier for deer?
Absolutely. Yep. So, and a lot of this, like, to make water healthier for deer, a lot of this, so I have a sister, she's actually a nutritional veterinarian. So I bounce a lot of stuff off her when it comes to animal health. But when it comes down to it, it's, if you have just a water source out there, you leave it be. Let's say you put in that pond, you put in a tub, whatever it is out there, maybe you have an existing pond on a new property you bought. And what's happening over time is Mother Nature is doing a process called eutrophication. So it's the aging of water. And her ultimate goal is to fill in every water source, to make it a swamp, to make it this pretty much cesspool. That's just how the nature works. So what our goal is, and this was my goal when I was managing ponds and lakes, is we wanted to stop that clock on Mother Nature or even reverse it. And how we did that is actually using beneficial bacteria and enzymes to actually start rapidly decreasing and degrading that organic matter that was killing that ecosystem. So essentially being green and more, I guess, naturalistic and holistic is now we're focusing on how can we actually take the nutrients that's impairing this water body, remove that, and actually restore that water back to a point of kind of where it was more pristine drinking water quality for, obviously all wildlife. Deer are part of that, but turkeys and upland, birds like quail and grouse and, everything essentially coming into that. Because if we don't do that, we're not adding it. What's going to happen is as plants grow every single year, they decay. And as they keep growing and decaying every year, it starts to actually rapidly increase how fast that pond or water body will go away, because just more and more growth will happen every single year until it's just gone. So we want to make sure, yeah, exactly. Choke it out. So we want to make sure that doesn't happen. And part of that is stripping nutrients. So where a food plot, we want as much nutrient as possible, right? We want as much phosphorus, nitrogen, potassium. In a pond or water body like that, we want as little as possible.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you're literally trying to get rid of all that nutrients, so all that organic matter doesn't cause growth in the water body, because otherwise exactly what's happening in my stream on this 40-acre property that we're sitting on right now is I have that invasive species. What'd you call it? You nailed it. You said it earlier.
Eurasian water milfoil.
Yeah, Eurasian water milfoil.
Say that again twice.
Eurasian water milfoil. I feel like I have to
morning tongue twister.
Yeah. So that stuff is just totally taking over the top of the surface water of the pond, of the stream, to where the stream was more, for those that are listening, you can't see my hands. It was like 8 to 12 feet wide, where it just brings in the green matter and the muck mats and all that stuff, and it brings it in. And so now there's just a narrow little stream that trickles down because it actually produces muck mats. And so it's making the muck to sustain itself. So it's fighting against the water, like he's saying, to get rid of the water, because it's just absorbing that nutrients and stealing from it. And so now it's going to get rid of it. And so he's saying if we take the matter, all the organic matter out of there and fight against those things, then the water will be there in a running source and moving and all that stuff. So
I guess what's going through my head right now is like, when you think of a healthy ecosystem, water obviously plays a very large factor in all that, but don't you want that fresh growth around the water? Because like you get different types of plants that thrive around water. Where's the happy medium with that?
Right. So to me, it's trying to select the right species, right? So like you think of a cattail. Cattail will encroach and take over a water body, just like in any wetland system. But if you can start getting more like sedges, so like fox sedge, bottlebrush sedge, porcupine sedge, all these different sedge species, they're low growing and they don't add a lot of biomass. Plus, they don't encroach into the water. They want to be right at that shoreline interface where it's water to mud, you could say. And so I try to get more of those plants, especially like when I'm actually building ponds for clients or myself. I am always planting that right edge with sedges. And there's also some other plants like arrowhead, which is kind of like called the aquatic food plot because deer will pound it. But what we want to do is we want to stabilize that shoreline still. Plus, it adds habitat for things like frogs and dragonflies and all these different beneficial species. But what we don't want is actual plants in the water. So like, like the milfoil, or you get into like all these other submerged aquatic plants like sago pondweed or curly leaf pondweed. All those are going to actually take away that pond, decay rapidly and add to that muck level, where those sedges on the edges, those aren't going to be adding to that massive amount of decay as more quickly, you could say, as some of these aquatic plants will, or maybe even like algae blooms would.
So, sorry, a sedge is a what?
So sedge let's just say a wetland grass.
Okay.
So, that's the best way I can kind of put it. So, we learned it as sedges have edges, but in school. But with that said, it's like a fancy aquatic grass, you could say. But they're usually only about.
That sounds a fancy aquatic grass. It just feels.
I like sedges have edges.
Sedges have edges. I'm just like a fancy aquatic grass. Sorry,
we're
we're just lay people.
Yeah, right. So, but no, so sedges, like I said, they're more of a better aquatic grass, wetland grass that we can actually plant, and they're not super encroaching. So like they don't want to be in a foot of water, otherwise they're going to drown out and die. So they want to be in those more marginal areas. So like even if you can think of like a big marsh or a wetland, those areas where you're walking through before you get to the cattails, a lot of times those are sedges or rushes. So that's that marginal area. So that the spot where kind of in a way where deer like to be. But like I like those around pond edges too, because like if you start getting cattails or you're getting taller weeds, deer don't like that either, because they don't like to have that kind of encroached, where they feel like they're caged in by a bunch of tall plants. So the sizes of sedges are only growing about a foot or two tall, and that's it.
Okay.
So can you, like, if you have an established water area can you like actually go and plant those, and will they help?
Yep.
I guess the way that I'm thinking about this is a lot like a forest. So let's say you have a closed canopy forest, or AKA a nasty water source. So before you go and open up the canopy, you want to take care of your invasive species first. Is it the same way with your water? So like if you have all that stuff that you don't want in the water, do you first take care of that and then start introducing plants around that?
Yeah. So like a good example of that would be like one of our big invasives up here is called reed canary grass. I don't know if you guys have that around you or not too. So like reed canary grass is a crazy invasive. We'd actually and this was when I was doing pond and lake work, we'd go and spray and kill all that reed canary out, and then we'd go right behind it and plant all the sedges and
what are you using
plants.
What can you spray around? I know, like you said, like it gets iffy around water. What kind of herbicides are you using?
So there are aquatic approved versions of glyphosate. So like Shore Clear is one and Rodeo is another. Those are two aquatic approved ones. And the biggest reason why you want aquatic approved is it's not the glyphosate itself, it's the carrier within that herbicide that'll kill like frogs and stuff like that if you just go and Roundup it. And then another one is called Habitat, which is an active ingredient is called imazapyr. But Habitat we use probably the most common. Super aggressive, and it's going to knock whatever you need out. Like Phragmites is another one that we use that a lot on.
And that just wipes out like basically everything. Start clean. It's like spraying glyphosate on your food plot.
Yep.
And as a as a landowner and stuff like that, with those aquatic versions of glyphosate and stuff like that, is there any special permitting that somebody needs to do that, or is...
Yeah, depending on the state, there is permitting. Like our state, for instance, Wisconsin, you need a DNR treatment permit on it. Pending the pesticide, you might also need to have an applicator permit. And Michigan is also one of those ones that has different permitting systems. So you do have to do your due diligence, because when you treat water, no matter the size, there's usually a permit involved for treating with an actual aquatic herbicide.
So when you just have an invasive species that's just taking over, they like how do you know, like speak to Wisconsin, like what does that permitting process look like?
Yeah, so like let's say and a lot of it, it's like, so for us, we can't usually spray a stream or creek. You can't have flowing water. It has to have some kind of actual controlled discharge. And so from that, usually if you have invasives, let's say Wisconsin, you'd get a hold of one of the application companies because they're going to have the commercial applicators that have the licensures. Plus, they're going to be able to get you the DNR permit. So then they'll go through this whole process of submitting to the DNR what your plant is that you want treating, what herbicides or algicides are going to be used. And 3 to 4 weeks later, usually as long as you have a controlled discharge, you'll get your permit. And then from there, they'll come treat it. But then they also have to submit a treatment record to the state as well, saying what was treated, how much was used. It's pretty intense.
It sounds expensive.
Yes, I mean, the actual permit, like in our state, it's only like $25. So the permit itself is cheap. It's just that you got to wait a long ass time to get your actual permit. But the actual,
yeah, so you're having to pay.
That's where it gets expensive.
Yes, right. Somebody else has to do it.
So, but then what's nice is like, so like depending on the herbicide or algicide you use, like I had some clients where I'd go and get them the permit, so they'd have the permit. And there's different caveats to it that, like, if you're a private pond owner and you're treating your own pond, no one else is doing it, you're not hiring someone to do it, sometimes you don't actually need to have the licensure. You just need to have the permit in hand. But then you got to submit the treatment record and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of stuff they don't teach you on, right? So if you have that pond, they're not going to just come and tell you that. And that's where a lot of times, like for me, since I was in that world, I still give those tips and tricks to people. Like they're like, hey, how do I go about this? Well, this is the process I would have done, just so it's not, there's so much red tape to it. Because otherwise, if you're trying to, like if you build a pond, let's say in Wisconsin, you dig a pond, you line it, fill it up. As soon as that pond has water in it, it's the waters of the state now. So now they have control on that pond, period. So there's a lot to it.
That sounds like
yikes.
Yeah. So
now in Illinois, like I'll say this, like in Illinois, I can go down there, in April, let's say, I can go up to someone's pond. It has algae. I can treat it the same day. So it's all state based.
Yeah. So here in Michigan, you basically kind of crushed my dreams because my running water, my trout stream is untouchable. Basically, I just
and Michigan. And honestly, Michigan's even tougher than Wisconsin because you guys have not only your Michigan DNR, but then you also have the Eagle program as well. So both of those have jurisdiction also on water. So you might have to have a permit through Eagle versus the DNR, and it can get hairy.
Are there any government funded program, like let's say, like you can get like equip for your
Sure.
property? Is there anything like that for water?
For public water bodies, yes, there are different grants that are all different rankings, things that way, but for like invasive species treatments and things that way. So like, for instance, like the stream you're talking about, there might be actually a way to get a grant for the entire stream restoration. It's just a matter of then you have to work with most likely a company or engineering firm to actually get that grant approved.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about reaching out because one of my buddies is high up in Trouts Unlimited or whatever, and he works with them like crazy, and they're constantly because it is a natural trout stream, and so it's like a feeder to all that, and so they want to, they're the kind of guys that come in and they go bananas with this stuff because they work with.
And honestly, that's a big help. If you have trout in there, that does help rankings when it comes to grants.
All right, so now let's use case scenario. Like I just purchased a property that there's a giant swamp on one side of it. So like I guess what would be like your recommendation, first thing to assess when you're looking at the swamp and how to make that healthier?
Yeah, so like if you bought a property with a swamp, like you just said, my biggest thing is going to be looking at, all right, what kind of habitat is present and what can we do to manipulate it? So like I just actually did a podcast with, I think you guys had him on too, Colin Koshkinen, and we were talking about that. So like what I do is I first analyze, all right, is it just a invasive species swamp? Like let's just say I'll read canary grass where, you're kind of, up poop creep, you could say without a paddle. But with that said, can we treat areas or can we get permits applied for where we can take out some of these invasives? The other part of it is, all right, is there actually those intermediate transition areas, like I talked about, where the sedges and rushes are, where we can maybe start planting some more shrub species like winterberry, viburnum, red osier dogwood, gray dogwood. Can we get some of those growing, tag alder even, where we can start actually manipulating and adding shrub species in it to actually give some better bedding? Because as we know, like a swamp ground, you get into late fall, there's a lot of times, especially like Michigan, Wisconsin, we get a late or early snowfall, I should say. It could level that marsh where it's just useless, where it's just there's nothing left to it. So those are the instances where I try to see, can I start getting other plants growing that aren't going to be smothered by invasive species like Phragmites or reed canary. But to me, that's what I try to do, or even tamarack. Tamarack's another one. Or is that they're swamp white oak in areas that are more that transition ground. So I'm looking more as how can I add more habitat value to it rather than can I just deal with what I have? Most likely, yeah, it's going to be something for the deer. But for me, I want to add more to that. So I want to get more woody browse. I want to get more cover. Maybe I'm doing some willow species that I can eventually actually maybe even hinge cut when you get big enough and make more of a bedding zone. But just adding structure to it is kind of my goal. Plus like trail systems. I do a lot of trail systems within my wetlands. So if I can drive areas that I won't bury my four-wheeler in, I'll go and actually make trail systems interlinking my whole property together to get deer where I want them to go.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it sounds real familiar. Yeah. I did a 40-acre swamp purchase last year that we did some trail systems, and we got a lot more trail systems to put in and all that stuff. And it is all those willows and stuff like that where the deer are typically the cattail areas. You know what I mean? I look at like where the pockets of where it's a little bit wetter and the cattails have taken over. That's where the deer aren't going through unless I kind of like snuck a little trail along the edge of it, and then now they're moving through there and all that kind of stuff. So, All right, I got to go back to like ratios of when you're looking at a guy's property and helping them out with that, from water on the property, acre per water tank or water source. How are you breaking that down?
So usually, like, let's just say per 40, I'm trying to get a minimum of 2 water sources per 40.
Okay.
And I'll put an asterisk on that. And the reason I do that is, like, I look at my own property, it's 100 acres. And on that 100 acres, I think I have 6 water sources right now. And 2 of them are within 150, 200 yards of each other. But it's just because of different wind sets and things that way.
Are these water sources tanks or actual like?
I have a combination of the earth ponds and also like line ponds and natural ponds. Okay. So that's kind of what I have. I usually don't do too much of the actual like Rubbermaid totes or cattle troughs. I really like the earth pond design just because of that slope where the deer can actually get in and out of it pretty freely. But now I get it, like they're not cheap whatsoever. But with that said, like if you have like the koi pond or Rubbermaid totes, they work. It's just I've seen the best probably results of the actual ponds, like a line pond or a natural pond. To me, those are instant magnets. Whereas like the troughs and stuff like that might take the deer some time to even get accustomed to them.
What do you say with the argument that I've seen where guys have talked about EHD with your pond problem? You know what I mean? You dig a pond and now it dries up a little bit because it just wasn't natural there. And so now it dries up. And so now you create a habitat for the midge.
Yeah. So I love that argument. I'm glad you brought it up. So it's one I love the most because so when you have a pond, the whole thing with EHD, and I've done a crazy amount of research on the Culicodes midge that causes EHD, is that midge thrives on essentially having no competition within the water body, having impaired water, and having high organic matter. And if you're building a brand new pond, as long as you're maintaining and taking care of that food chain and ecosystem, you're not going to have the midge issue. So it's more of these really destroyed ponds. That's the issue. And, for me, like as soon as I know that there's life in a pond, I have frogs around, I have dragonflies, I have different beetles in it, I have birds and bats enjoying those ponds, I know I don't have the midge issue. Plus, I'm adding things like one product I help invent, EHD fence. So I had that, and I'm getting rid of the muck nonstop. So we talked about obviously the muck degradation earlier in this podcast. I'm actually allowing or not allowing muck to even form because I'm constantly adding sediment reducing bacteria strains so we don't have that organic matter when the drought does occur. And on the flip side, I'll even throw it back on those guys that, because usually they're the ones that obviously want to promote more of the tanks and things that way, is when you have those tanks, what occurs is what I call the aquarium effect. So, and what I mean by that is, all right, little Johnny goes to the fair, he wins a goldfish. Mom and dad buy him a fish tank. He doesn't take care of it. What happens? That goldfish dies, that tank turns gross and green, and you have pathogenic bacteria strains now. So actually having the tank, if not taken care of, not cleaned, not saying everyone isn't doing it, but if you don't clean that, you could actually now bring in Salmonella, E. coli, Leptosporidium, all these different pathogenic bacteria that can also harm your deer and kill them. So it's one of those things that water is, no matter what, wants to grow something.
Sure.
I don't care if it's a tank. I don't care if it's a pond. It needs to grow. It's a living organism.
Right.
So to me, I would rather have a pond that has actually a full food chain, full ecosystem, has plants, has native species in it, has insects, invertebrates, amphibians, reptiles, you name it. And in a way, now I've just took this whole little living, breathing deal and kept out the bad things. So like the way I look at it, and we can bring this into invasive species, is, it's no different than if you have buckthorn on your property and, you're not doing the correct timber stand improvements. You're not looking at getting rid of that and spraying it and doing all these different things. It's just going to take over. Well, it's no different than midge. If you let that pond die, essentially, now that's what I look at as the invasive species. It just took over the whole pond because you didn't actually do your job maintaining it. So no matter what side people are on, tanks or ponds, to me, it all boils down to actually water quality.
That totally makes sense, because my first water hole I ever put in was a metal tank. It was all dynamite the first year. Second year, I could visibly notice like the water quality was like getting pretty gross, and the deer literally just stopped drinking out of it completely. And then I drained it, which was a pain because it was a buried metal tank in there. So pumped all the water out of it, cleaned it with my boots more or less, filled it back up with more fresh pond water, and then went right back to drinking out of it.
And to kind of go jump on your point there with that. All right, so that pond went to crap, right? And they're not using it. Well, now what stops them from going upstream to the neighbor's pond that might be better, or it might even be the one that has EHD issues, but they really didn't like your pond anymore, and now they just left. So to me, that's why actually having the good water will keep your deer closer, and you can protect your deer a little bit more when you keep that water in higher water quality, versus now your pond got impaired, they left, and maybe now they went to that pond that has the EHD issue.
So competitively, what is better, natural water on a property or artificially made or whatever? What do you see? What do you think?
Yeah, so to me, I think end of the day, it's all about placement, right? So I'll give you kind of some examples here. So like I hunt on my property, I have 20 acres of cattail marsh. So I have water up the yin-yang. We have a 1 acre fishing pond. We have, the neighbor has 2 little 1/4 acre ponds. But for me, like I have one pond that's probably 150 yards maybe away from the marsh. And I pull deer out of that marsh and they'll go to my pond to drink. They're not sitting in that marsh drinking. They're actually going to my water holes to drink. But now, like, if the natural pond is clean, clear, and like I think in northern Michigan, northern Wisconsin, northern Minnesota, we get a lot of those what are called ephemeral pools. So they're false ponds that fill up in the springtime. We probably have all seen those where you get a little gully and suddenly before you know it, you actually have water there. Deer will drink them, but to me, a natural water source is usually colder than, let's say, an augmented water source. And the reason why that's important is deer's game is a survival game. Whenever they drink out of a water source that is cold, that animal knows that shocks their system, right? So, we as humans, we're not the smartest species. And when we go, end of the day, we worked a hard day. What do we want? We want an ice cold drink. We want an ice cold beer, whatever it might be. Well, technically, every time you drink that, you just rapidly decreased your body temperature. And the deer know this. All animals know this. So they want that warmer water that doesn't shock their internal body systems. Whereas if they're drinking that stream, creek, natural pond or spring-fed pond, that's colder water. They'll actually leave that natural water source, that colder source, and go to your augmented source. because it's warmer.
That's what I was trying to pry out of you, because I mean, I've heard that argument and statement before of like, because this 40 that I'm on, has a stream that pretty much goes diagonal to diagonal. It actually goes from one corner, top corner, all the way around. It's a big L that kind of wraps around it. I rarely have seen deer drink out of that stream compared to a water hole. I've watched them drink out of the tub water hole, and then I have a little makeshift pond water hole that they frequent more than I've ever seen them drink out of the stream itself, just because it's spring fed. And the springs just line it. I mean, the creek starts right here, and so this is the headwaters of it. And so it's, it's cold. It's 53 degrees all the time, and that's all the warmer it ever gets. And
does that debunk the myth? Maybe it's not a myth, but like deer do not like to drink out of moving water because it's moving, or is that go back to just because most likely that moving water is being spring fed and it's cooler?
So actually a little bit of the moving water instance, it depends on how fast that water is moving, right? So there's a little bit to it. If you have a really fast moving stream that has ripples, it's actually a noise issue. So they can't hear as well when they're down drinking. So that's one part of it. But the other part of it is, like the moving water instance is a lot of times it's just really cold water. If it's moving that fast, it's typically very heavily spring fed. So they don't prefer the cold water. Will they drink it? Yes. But especially in wintertime, I've seen a lot of streams and creeks that are that way where deer will pound them because that's the only open water they have available. But to me, they want that slow, stagnant, water essentially where it's not moving. They can drink it. It's warmer. Plus, a lot of times your more natural systems will have more mineral enrichment in them too. So like the whole, you probably have heard the whole deer like dirty water.
Yeah.
Well, that's also a myth. It's not that they like crappy water.
Yeah.
No, they like because it's mineral enriched. Okay. So that's the other part of this. But so deer will drink out of moving water. It's just it's not preferred because of like I said, a sound issue because of the predatory prey response. Also because of the colder nature of that water.
Okay, so now you just threw out the mineral enriched water. So now, let's talk about guys that are putting the minerals in the water and stuff like that to attract deer. Let's hear what you got to say about that.
You're smiling.
Yeah, no, he's fired up. Oh, I knew he was gonna crank him up on this one.
Oh, it's a pet peeve.
Yeah.
It's a giant pet peeve of mine. So when we go into minerals into the water, when you do that. So what are minerals really comprised of, right? Salts, high phosphorus levels. The limiting nutrient of all growth in water is phosphorus. So you just fertilize your water. Also, so Culicodes midge tolerates high salinity, high salt content. Other aquatic inverts, aquatic insects do not. Amphibians do not. They can't tolerate salt. So when you throw in salt into this water, and phosphorus. So not only did you fertilize it to impair the water more, but you also just killed off the ecosystem with that salt and made it actually more now of a prime breeding range for the EHD midge. So to me, take that, throw it in the garbage.
So can you do anything to, besides putting plants and the right species and creating the ecosystem of water, is there anything that you can do to, let's say you have a tank, is there anything you can do to that tank to
what should you do? Let's just say that. What should you do to a tank of water that you have out there annually? Like I got a 100-gallon trough out there. What should a guy be doing from your expertise?
So there's two ways of I have two ways of thought on that. So one, if you have that tank, like you talked earlier, you put the one tank out as a pain to get rid of and pull out. So in those instances, and this is what I do with my earth ponds or my tubs that I see on properties or manage, so I'm adding EHD fence to it monthly. So from May through September, I'm adding bacteria and enzymes to that water body just to keep it clean, clear, and healthy. And because like I said, the pond always wants to grow something. So we want to maintain it and actually keep it in proper health with actual bacteria and enzymes. And to me, this is no different than what I did on a big scale or a small scale. Like when I was doing 10-acre ponds or 5-acre ponds, 1 acre, you name it. But I was adding bacteria and enzymes monthly to them. The other part of it is I actually do add pond coloring to all my tanks, all my ponds. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is pond coloring will actually reflect UV rays, so that way you actually don't lose as much water to evaporation. You'll still obviously lose it to consuming, but that's part of it. We want the deer obviously to drink it, but if you can reduce the evaporation part, that's huge. The other part is there are some pond dyes out there that are actually registered for reduction of aquatic plant and algae growth. So if you have a pond, you can actually, once again, you reflect those UV rays, you won't grow as much weeds and algae as well. So between those two items, I'm doing that nonstop. But then also, if you see excessive growth, take a rake to it. Take it out, whether it's, you have duckweed, watermeal, algae, whatever it might be. I'm constantly taking that stuff out, raking it out, because weeds and algae, you just got rid of nutrients as well, which is a good thing. We don't want nutrients in the water, so pull that out.
And this is in a tank or more of a pond setting?
Both, honestly. So like I would say I treat tanks and ponds pretty similarly, other than the only part I really don't do as much in the tanks is they usually don't have the muck issue, right? So you're usually not having this big, massive muck issue. So I'm not using things like, so like in the EHD fence kit, for instance, we have a thing called D-muck. So that's the sediment reducing bacteria. A lot of times I'm not adding that to it, especially in year 1, but like maybe year 2, year 3, I'll start adding it when you get a little bit of leaf litter that's starting to add up. But then as I get into fall, I'm also raking and trying to get rid of as much leaf litter as possible too. So like I'll go up in fall when I'm just checking batteries or whatever it is, I'll bring a leaf rake and I'll try to get rid of as much of that as possible, because at the end of the day, that's going to add for more muck as well.
Yeah.
So those are things I'm doing to keep it clean, in addition to like on a natural pond, doing the plants and things. But then lastly, I'll say with the tanks is, if possible, if it's not too much of a hassle, I would say every 2 years, you should be pulling that tank out, cleaning it. So completely take it out, take it back to the farm, your house, and pressure wash it, rinse it off. Because otherwise you'll have so many different bacterial strains that are being formed along that tank that could be an issue, especially if you're not using beneficial bacteria to compete with.
So I see all the time people saying just throw a copper pipe in it. Is that like... I think I know the answer.
So copper is the main, I would say, algicide mineral or metal that we use. But with that said, like it usually isn't throwing enough copper actually into the water to kill it. And you got to be careful with copper. So like even copper sulfate, you probably have heard about too. And those, if used improperly, can also kill all the beneficial items as well in the water. So you got to be careful when throwing copper into something. Because the other one out there is like goldfish. People say, throw some goldfish into it.
That was my next question.
That's gross. All they're doing is adding ammonia to the water and actually destroying it. So there's so much bad information out there that makes me just grab my hair and rip it out. But yeah, so like copper pipe, it's not really a solution. There's better stuff if you want to clean it up. Like there's oxidizer algicides out there that actually will treat it instantly if you really want to clean up that way. Like I said, there's a little bit of permitting kind of stuff, but I haven't seen the copper pipe work really that well. Also, barley bales is another one you might have heard of, or barley straw. It works a little tiny bit, because what it does is as barley breaks down, it puts in hydrogen peroxide into the water, and that's supposed to oxidize and kill the algae. But once again, I have ran over more barley balls or barley bales with my spray vessel I had, because that's where all the algae was just attached to. So a lot of these little methods you see online are not a fix. So to me, like that's why I'm using the pond colorants. I'm using bacteria and enzymes to do it more of a natural way to keep it clean.
So how about this? From like an install of a tank, do you want a running, like I know a lot of guys try to put them where they have like a natural drainage so that when they do get rain, it fills up and brings in fresh water or new water and keeping the tank filled. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. So I do like it. Obviously, it's one of those things. A lot of people can't get to their property often. Like I've heard of some guys where I can get my land 2, maybe 3 times a year before hunting season. So you're not going to be up there being able to sustain your water. Obviously, you're not up there enough to fill it. So to me, if you can use runoff, by all means, do it. But then plan for how you are going to manage that runoff. Because every time it rains, we always call them nutrient loading events. So every time it rains, obviously you're bringing in nitrogen, you're bringing in phosphorus into that water. So look at ways where you can, for one, slow that runoff down, but 2, also filter it. So are you going to put in maybe let's say a small prairie stretch, maybe a little bit of, switchgrass, or are you going to plant around the whole edge of that area, maybe in clovers and chicories, but something to filter that water before it gets into your pond. Don't let it just be a straight shot into that pond, because otherwise you just added fertilizer rich water into your water source, especially because, let's be honest, a lot of these ponds are by food plots where guys are fertilizing like crazy. So do some kind of buffer, whether it's a prairie buffer, riparian zone, or if you can actually put in like clover, chicories, but try to
the old riparian zone. Sorry, I don't know what that is, so I gotta go back and I said the old riparian zone. That old zone. Gotta get that built up.
Science.
Let's just say science. Yeah. Cool. All right, Bill Nye.
Hey man, I'm a nerd. I'm a water nerd.
It's good. I like it, Zach. All right, just sorry I derailed it. What's the say the word again? You said some zone, and it was really
riparian zone.
Yeah, riparian zone. What do we got there?
Yeah, so your riparian zone, that's that buffer point just outside the water body. So like it could be giant, it could be small, but that's that transition from, let's say, your upland zone to your water.
Okay.
That's your riparian zone. So that's where you want to kind of do your buffering or planting per se. So like for me, like when I do a small wildlife pond, let's just say it's 30 feet in diameter, I'll be planting all of that pond size and beyond. So like I'll have probably like a 30-foot stretch of clover around that whole pond, just because I want to, once again, take away some of that nutrients and filter it.
So back to like the tank application, because I see more guys hands down that are getting into food plotting and all this stuff. A tank is way easier than digging a pond, a lot more costly, or you can save money on it, all that kind of stuff. So I got a drainage in my Kentucky property that 60% of the time it pools water naturally down there, because you get big gully washers, they come out and they make a little puddle that will pool water, but they won't be running all year long. But so there's natural of those. Sometimes, like, to take advantage of that, you throw a tank in one of those spots instead of any of it leaching into the ground. It just stays there, all year long. Your thoughts on that? Like, is that because I'm not going to be able to plant anything in that little drainage to filter it. So what do I do?
Yeah, and to me, I'm not as worried about like those kind of areas, because most of that runoff is obviously a timber runoff, standard. So to me, it's not as much of an issue. It's going to be natural nutrient loading. So natural phosphorus and nitrogen that's coming from, leaf litter and all that kind of stuff, which isn't as worrisome as like a farm field runoff. That's where I'm more concerned about really doing the buffers. So like in those instances, and I have those too on my own properties where, I don't have a way to fill it because it's way back in the woods, or it's on top of this ridge that I can't get my tractor or whatever to. So I'm just funneling that water, but that's where I get a little heavier on my treatments of the water body. So like I'm just making sure I'm always adding bacteria and enzymes to it, just to make sure I'm doing my job. Plus then I'm also watching it. Like I have a client in Bluff Country, Western Wisconsin. In 2 years, one of his earth ponds, so same scenario you kind of talked about, he was trying to collect all the runoff, that earth pond already had 6 inches of muck in it in 2 years. So I went in there last year and I literally rolled up the jeans, went in there, and I scooped all of it out and got rid of all of it, and then treated it right away with bacteria and enzymes. So it's just a matter of you got to go in there a little more often to clean it out, just to get rid of that leaf litter and that muck from obviously increasing.
Have you ever done any studies like on your own property where you've treated one of your water sources and not the other, and seen more use or anything like that?
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. So like I just did it last year on mine and one of my clients' properties, and it's wild. I mean, even like one of the guys, I don't know if you've heard of the Breaking Point with Mike Mansell and Brendan Nading, but like they used it too and they had the same results. But I started treating these ponds that were, I'd say, worse off, where I was like, all right, I got to fix this one, but this one looks fine. As I fixed the one that was worse, all my deer activity shifted. So it was kind of neat to see how, all right, the deer were kind of spread amongst both, but then they shifted completely to this one that was treated. And where it really gets kind of cool with it, so I've done more studies like on muck reduction. I've done studies on nutrient reduction and invertebrate increases, things that way. But just through trail cam watching, as I treat those ponds, I can also see when the ponds are getting worse when they're starting to get impaired because some of the deer activity starts shifting. And then I started treating it and I started seeing the shift back. And like I did one with Todd Graff last year with Bow Hunter Die. I went down by his place and he was talking about a pond he put in. He goes, the first year was great. Deer pounded. They were all over it. And every year it seemed to get less and less and less. It's because the water was getting worse and worse.
Gotcha. So with that, what are, what is a good volume of deer activity when you're watching that you're like, other than knowing like, oh, last week there was a bunch of deer here and this week there's not. How are you gauging that to say that this is a good amount of deer activity versus not a good amount of deer activity for a guy that throws out a water hole and starts to get use on it?
So for instance, like a bad activity is like maybe a deer or two is coming into a week. Okay. Whereas like when my ponds are in the best shape they can be, it's literally daily activity, nonstop. Like that's where I'm getting every picture of every buck I have, especially like ponds. Velvet or yeah, absolutely. Okay. So that's where all my cell cams are, like late fall or late summer, early fall. They're all on ponds because literally all my deer are flushing to them when they're in good condition.
So sorry, you're good. That trickled into then like seasonal use of your ponds. Like, Are you seeing it? I'm assuming you're seeing a difference in seasonal use of ponds and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. So I mean, to me, what I've seen, essentially for that season, right? Obviously, wintertime, it's almost absolutely. I mean, not there, right? Because they can't drink. Because especially for us, it's frozen. But like my deer are still walking over, they're still checking it. They're still looking if there's water, if there's a melt recently, they'll go on it. But I would say my highest water use is those later summer months, especially when like drought picks up, things that way, or like early fall is crazy. And I would say that extends all the way through the rut because the rut, there's also a pinnacle where I don't maybe not get as much doe activity, but my buck activity goes skyrockets. And it sounds crazy to some, but I truly believe you can pattern a buck to water in the rut because he still has to drink or cool off.
So with that statement in the northern climates, though, from a holding power, would you then say that like putting a bubbler in a pond and keeping that ice off of it would probably be very beneficial to holding deer? Yes. Or okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So like, it's one of those things like I'm trying to work right now on with a couple of the old reps I worked with that build aeration systems, but I'm trying to find a kind of more a financially sound option for these small ponds and tanks. I've been trying some of the Chinese Amazon ones, which they're not the best because a lot of times they'll die. But if you can do that, if you can keep the water open, it definitely helps. Like we used to do that a lot with our bigger clients, bigger pond clients, where they'd be big hunters, let's say, and they're like, hey, I want to provide water. So we would actually go into the pond, we would grab the diffuser that the air goes through and makes the bubbles, and we would drag that to the shoreline and just to keep that water open, just like a duck hunter would do to hunt ducks. And we would bring those there just so those deer could have water all winter long.
Can you run, will solar have enough power to power that all through winter most of the time?
Most of the time, if you have a big enough solar pump. So that's where it's tough. Like these smaller ponds, that's actually the biggest issue I'm finding right now is for the really small tanks and ponds, I haven't found a good enough pump yet to actually produce enough turnover and flow to keep it open. Whereas like in the bigger settings, there's solar systems all over that I can recommend, but they're expensive. So like, if you have, let's say, a half-acre pond, right, and you want a solar aerator, so you're probably going to need 2 diffusers, so 2 points of bubbles coming up. Those systems are like $12,000.
Ooh.
They're crazy expensive.
Get your jackhammer. Get your jackhammer and chainsaw out every day. Just go out there.
I got an ice saw for experience, so I'll just go out there and saw.
Oh, you do have an ice saw? Yeah. Nice. Good for you.
For like on a little tank, they make like farmers use a lot of trough heaters. Would that be sufficient to, I mean, again, if you have the ability to get power to it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, if you can keep it open, yeah, to me it's no different than giving water to livestock. Absolutely. And there's like, even though they make those little like balls you can throw in there too that they're supposed to be able to push it down. The other thing I found unique, and I saw this the other day, and I want to try it next year, but there was a ratio of molasses to add to the water to keep it from freezing. So I'm going to try it in a tank next year. And to me, I don't think it'll hurt anything because sugar is actually a good thing for beneficial bacteria anyways. That's what sugar needs to feed on is sugar, or bacteria needs to feed on sugar. So I'm like, well, it might actually help the bacteria strains too. So I want to try that next year. And I'd have to find it in my phone, but there is a ratio of molasses allegedly that keep it open.
That is interesting. There's your next product.
There you go.
So when it comes now, I was a big just water hole guy.
Here's the confessionals. The confessionals with Lee.
Well, I was just thinking like this new property. One thing I was like staring at is like where to add water. And at first I was thinking like, do I even need to add water? Because again, the whole south side of it is a glorified like open. It's a lake more than anything. But looking on satellite, it's like you can tell that it fills in like the entire outside with junk. So now if I want to add water to the property, let's go back to one thing that I don't know if you answered or if I accidentally cut you off. How much water to per acre per section do you like to add?
Yeah, at least 2 per 40, if not
2 per
a
40.
little bit
Okay,
more.
you did answer. Okay, so if I wanted to add a pond, is there a place to like really look at? Again, obviously you want a low area where it can hold water and whatever, but strategically, is there a place to put that water source on your property?
Yes. So to me, I really focus on transition zones. So I want to have water that's in between bedding transitions, bedding to food, food to food. To me, those are the best spots, and you think about it, and this is a lot of times, like I said, going back to the farming side of it, right? You want water near food because they're going to be feeding, they're going to be drinking. But with that said, I want to make sure my deer aren't traveling a long ways either. So like I have some water that's high and dry. So on top of ridges where I know deer are bedding, but I don't want to force them to go a long ways to get their water. Entrances, the food plots, that's another big one I usually push. So like if you can make those, let's say you have acre food plot, right? I'll make a small micro plot off of that. That's maybe only an 1/8 acre that has the pond, that's screened, that has apple trees, all this stuff, because I know that's where that buck's going to stage. And so I want to make sure the water is in these areas of security and safety and cover, because when a deer drinks, especially like out of a tank, they're the most vulnerable they can be, because when you think feeding, what are they doing? They're actively browsing. So they're moving, they can walk, they're checking things out. Water, they're stuck. So you try to kind of give them the point of they're near cover, but they're close to maybe entering that food plot or food source. So I try, like I said, once again, most ideal spots, transition areas, entrances to bigger food plots, and just make sure it's close to cover and safety.
But let's say I actually go out and like dig a pond and establish a new water source. Is it better to leave that away from your food plot? Because again, I'll be out there spraying chemicals, herbicides, fertilizers, all that stuff. So is it best is there like a safe distance?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times like your overspray, you're talking anywhere from 15 to 30 feet, right? So like that's where like when I talked about kind of what I do with that buffer zone, usually if I'm putting a pond in, I'm going to plant that 30-foot edge around the pond of clover and chicory. And yeah, year one, I got to do all that work, spray, do all this stuff. Hopefully that's the year you're digging a pond. But then I plant that clover and chicory away so I can always push myself off of it so I'm not affecting it. So then the rest of that food plot will be, your grains, your greens, whatever it might be, your soybeans, your corn, whatever it might be. But around that pond, I'll always put a perennial and then transition into my annual food plot.
That makes sense.
Is there any other plant species that you would recommend to, let's say it's naturally a low area, pretty wet feet the whole time? What's like your go-to plant species around that?
To me, a lot of times if it's wet, I'm doing a lot of clover and chicory just because I've seen it battle through some really crazy wet stuff. Plantains are also another one. which is a natural prairie forb species. Small Burnett is another one that does well in it, in wetter ground. So to me, I'm still always making sure it's a food based. Like I don't want to go in there and plant a bunch of like fescue or anything like that because it doesn't benefit the deer herd at all. Mm-hmm. So I still want to try to get those clovers and chicories. And like I'm thinking about one of my ponds right now. Like there's times a year I can't drive my tractor through it as I'm going to bury myself. Mm-hmm. And that I have all planted in clover and chicory. And then like I just frost seeded it not that long ago. So that's usually my go-to. Now, if it's super, super wet where it's like, holy crap, it's a swamp. Well, then, that's where you can start getting more into like the sedges and rushes and stuff that way. But now you're making it more of a pond, kind of in a cover zone in a way, because you're getting taller plants now.
Sure. So in a wet foot area, like we were talking about, I kind of made some of those trails in one of my swampy areas where it was that fescue and some of that stuff that I kind of took back. Your recommendation for food plot seed in those types of areas, would that just be your clover and chicories and stuff like that? Or
so in those instances, I mean, if you can plant it, that's when you're going to start getting more in your aquatic plants. So there's a couple that like I've seen deer absolutely hammer. And so one would be actually blue flag iris. And so it's going to be taller, but they love blue flag iris. Arrowhead is another one. It's always known as the duck potato. But that one you can plant in those zones. It depends on how nutrient rich the area is. Like I've seen it grow 6 inches. I've seen it grow 4 feet. But like that kind of stuff the deer will eat. Pickerel weed. I mean, so there's a bunch of different aquatic plants you can put into those super wet zones that will take over. They'll establish themselves. They'll protect the ground, but ultimately they'll provide some food. It's just that you can't obviously drive through those ones because you're just going to crush obviously the aquatic plant.
So somebody wants to add we'll call it a natural pond to their property. What's like without seeing it, site specific, obviously, but like, what's your step-by-step? Okay, this is what you do to build a pond.
Yeah. So like to properly build that pond, and let's just say, they have the area they picked out. So to me, that pond design is going to be the make or break of if deer are going to use it. Right. So usually my rule of thumb is what I'd say is the hottest size would be anywhere from 20 to 30 feet diameter. That's what I kind of shoot for, is 20 to 30 feet diameter. And then from there, I'm trying to get a proper slope. So this is going to go over most people's heads, but like I'm trying to get a 3 to 1, a 4 to 1 slope. So essentially for every 3 or 4 feet you go out linearly, you drop a foot of depth. So like a 25-foot pond, let's just say if you have a 4 to 1 slope, all right, so you can start going into that middle, you're going to get about 3 feet of depth. And that's where you kind of want to be, is like 3 to 4 feet on those size ponds, because if you get too steep, so you get to the point where the deer can't use it anyways. And you'll see them trying to stay on the edges. To me, the best ponds are when a deer can wade in to about its brisket level and actively drink. That's when they love them. And then like I'll have deer all day long, does, fawns, bucks, you name it. They just stand in there, they lay in it. But they feel like they can escape that. Whereas if it's too steep, they don't feel like they can escape it as easily. So you won't see them really using that as much. They'll stay on those edges a little bit, but they won't prefer them. But then also kind of make sure you have a setback on that pond. So by setback, what I mean is don't have brush and all this stuff right on top of that pond. Push it back like 15 feet at least, just so deer can, once again, when they're drinking, they can have a visual of what's happening around that pond. Because as soon as they feel like they're encaged into it, they're not going to use it either. Because once again, they don't know what predator is on the other side of that brush pile. But now I will say on the other side, there is some unique ways you can build a pond for your advantage. So like I've seen these guys do this with tractors and skid loaders, where one side you'll do a beautiful slope, right? And that's where you're going with your equipment. But the back side, you make it super steep, like almost a drop off. The reason being is now deer will be forced to go to that front side, giving you actually a shot with the bow. Whereas if you leave that backside a perfect slope, well, they could be drinking, looking at you.
Can I have your pen and paper?
You're going to write that down?
No, I have a beautiful idea I want to draw in my brain.
I was just thinking in my head, I'm going to have to borrow your skid steer.
Yeah, that's fine. But I have like I heard a beep in the distance because I have a timber project going on right now. And I'm just thinking up and dreaming up a new pond location that I think is going to be absolutely awesome. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to go dig this pond and then I'm going to do the little ramp thing. And it's going to be like the kid deer killing buck hole. And it's going to be so close to the house that it's right on that borderline where we're going to have to just really screen the crud out of which would be the east side of it with miscanthus and get really nasty and maybe put some conifer trees even on that side.
Said, can you screen a pond too much where, like you said,
right, I'm going to keep it off about 15, 30 feet, but I got to make sure it's screened from the house in the barn.
Gotcha.
And so but we'll give a buffer.
Your backyard pond.
It's not going to be that close. It's going to be behind the barn. It's going to be at the bottom of that, behind that staging area. At the bottom, the south side of that staging area, the landing zone where that huge brush pile is right now, I'm going to remove that whole brush pile, use that brush to pile up behind the barn there just to screen off all of that because they're naturally not going to go there anyways. Just swap that brush pile to the other side and then make that whole bottom part where they got all that brush pile, dig that all out and then berm it up towards that big, huge oak. I know no one can know what I'm talking about. It's all in my brain.
I've walked there,
but it's so beautiful right now. It's going to be so money, and we're going to put an elevated box blind right behind the barn there, and you're going to be able to pop right up in there, and they're going to come out of that bottom. They're going to come off that hill, and they're going to wrap right in down and drop into that pond. And every deer,
no one's picturing that.
Every deer, I know. It's just beautiful in my brain. It's so good. It's not even funny.
So, is there any kind of like a food plot design? Is there a specific shape besides? I really like your putting a hard drop off on one side to funnel a deer to come into one side. Was there any shapes to a pond that you kind of play with and recommend?
So there's a couple ways I've done it. So, and it depends on how you're building it. So if I have to say you're doing on a slope on a hillside, I'll do a lot of times more like triangular shaped pond because I'm trying to make this big backs berm, you could say, and then it'll triangle up. So that shape I use quite a bit. I try to make them as circular as possible, just because when I'm digging them with the equipment, it's easier for me to do it that way to make a circle and make a nice slope down to that point. But then when I talk about the ones with the drop off, a lot of times those ones I'm actually going and it's almost like kind of a Y, Y's out a little bit. So you have this big slope area in front, but then it goes to that point in the middle.
Back.
So
a big U.
If you can make them like a food plot, for instance, we all know deer don't really care for those perfect square food plots or the perfect shapes, right? They like where it's different, it meanders and things that way. So even if you had a point that came out into a field and you kind of wrapped it with a boomerang shaped pond, well, now you just gave more aspect for those deer to drink out of it, things that way. So to me, you can play with it all you want. Just make sure that you get a good slope, that the deer can enter it, and that it has these, like I said, 3 feet at least of depth, just so that for water quality reasons, it maintains itself.
And the one thing you said that kind of threw me off though is when lining a pond, you're having the deer yet still go in it. It kind of freaks me out of poking
breaking
holes.
The liner.
Yeah, breaking the liner.
Yeah, yes. So there's a lot more to it when it gets to lining. And the reason being is, that fear, right? Our deer's going to jump on, it's going to poke a hole, and here goes my $200 liner is shot. So what we've done, and so the biggest pond I ever lined was 43 acres, which you probably call is pretty much a lake.
I would call that a lake.
Yeah, that's a lot of lining.
But these are all ponds that as soon as we're starting building them, deer are on top of them because they're curious and they smell the dirt being moved in all these different areas. But so what we did to protect that liner is on the bottom, you actually use a landscape fabric. So you put landscape fabric over the whole basin, you put your pond liner on top of that, and then you actually bring another layer of fabric over the pond liner. So it gets sandwiched between 2 layers of fabric, and that fabric is tougher than nails. I mean, it takes a lot to even put a knife through it. And there's a couple reasons why those different layers of fabric we use. So the bottom one protects from stones and roots and things that way from puncturing. The top one serves two purposes. One, to protect the liner, but two, it actually will help hold your material you put back on the liner. So whether it be dirt, sands, it'll hold that material so it doesn't go all the way down to the middle.
Awesome.
Is that so the bottom layer and the top layer are the same layer, same material?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And what are you recommending for pond liners? Can I if I take out my old pool liner and use that? Are you good with that, or no, not good with that?
So I mean, and once again, it's probably because that was the world I worked in, right, with ponds and building them. But so like it's actually a company out of the state of Oregon. It's BTL Liners, but so they build commercial pond liners. And I always use their stuff because what they do is they make 30 mil is the thickness of it. So it's going to be thicker than most materials you're going to find like at the Home Depots and all these places. But what's cool about it is they also have a UV coating. So that way, let's say if the liner is bare and sunny shows the sun, it won't deteriorate. Whereas most of your billboard liners and pool liners and all that kind of stuff, if they're exposed too long, they just crack, rip, and sunny their junk. So I use a 30 mil material that has a UV coating on it.
And how much does that cost for a 20 by 20 or 30?
I think it's like 250. I think it's like $250.
Okay, so it's not that terrible.
No.
Yeah.
How much how soil are you putting back on the liner?
4 to 6 inches.
4 to 6 inches. Wow.
But you typically want like a sand or gravel, not like actual soil.
Right. If you can find sand, like whether it be on the property or not, or you want to buy some, to me, that's preferred because that's non-organic material. So it's especially with the EHD issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But if the only option is putting dirt back on, it's not the make or break. It's just, you got to know that it's more important for you now to treat that pond because you already put organics back in it. So it's more important to get started right away with bacteria and enzymes.
Yeah. Gotcha. All right. So if there's
I'm just looking at your
dude, it's so beautiful.
Here.
It's in my brain. It's an art. It's a piece of art. That will get sold on eBay or somewhere or the World Wide Web or internet sphere things. Places,
no one would, not a single person would know what this drawing is if they just.
That's why I'm saying it's abstract.
It's abstract.
It's abstract art, dude. That's why I'm saying it's going to be worth so much someday.
Is this your stand in the tree too?
No. Okay, that's the big oak tree. That's my reference point.
Okay, got you.
Is
there a? So you said all ponds you recommend 20 feet, correct?
You're saying 20
by
30.
20 by 30.
20 or 30.
Is there like on a small side, like let's say you maybe don't have the equipment to do that or don't have the space to do that? What's like the smallest that you recommend?
So, and this goes for ponds and tubs. I usually try to keep it that I'm never going under 100 gallons of water. So once you start getting under 100 gallons of water, to me, that's when evaporation is actually going to beat you at the game. And you're going to start having to fill it way too often and intrude way too often on that deer. So to me, as long as you're trying to stay above 100 gallons, that's the goal. So like even if you're just trying to dig a little line pond, right, you might be doing one that's like 10 by 10, but it's better than nothing, in my opinion. But yeah, don't go and like grab a 55-gallon drum and think that 25 gallons of water is going to like make your property this awesome property. To me, that's not enough water. You're going to lose it to evaporation and to consumption way too quickly.
Have you seen the videos of like the guys that are throwing kiddie pools on the side of their food plots and filling them up once? Like, I don't know if you've ever seen those videos. I don't mean to pick on those guys, but I think it's awesome and it's funny. Did you point it yourself?
No,
I've
contemplated it.
I've seen it. I've seen it done.
Well, I'm just Dutch, so I'm like, I go to a Tractor Supply and one of those 150-gallon tubs are like not the cheapest thing in the world. So I'm like, oh, right. This kiddie pool is $20.
You know what? Zach might have a difference of opinion on this, but I've seen them like crazy on like Facebook Marketplace every once in a while. If you just search pond on there, there's like people that pull out their ponds all the time. Like they try to put a koi pond in, and they're like 400-gallon tanks, and there's like multiple, and it's terraced, and they're like $50 and $20.
I have 100%.
And so it's like
I've only seen smaller ones though.
Oh well, you gotta.
I want to get a big one.
Yeah, get yourself a big one. But it's time that
I've
lose
used
some
those.
liquid. Yeah. Good.
So I'm thinking, so like,
I gotta be.
okay, go pee. So, and I'm selfishly just thinking about my property right now, my food plot design. So like, I want to add water to it, but if I wanted to add a natural pond to it, I think where I would have to, with the slope, where I'd have to put that is not ideal for my stand location by any means, just because of access. So if you picture kind of a bean-shaped food plot, my stand site will be right in the middle of the bean. And so like if I wanted to establish a water source inside of the plot, I guess if I don't have good runoff there or anything, are you saying like at that point a tank is it your best option or dig?
So like to me, if you dig, what's nice about it is like, I guess, and this is my experience is when I put in the bigger ponds, there's a lot of like line ponds and stuff that way that I put in that I've never had to fill again. Mm-hmm. Rainwater is self-sustaining them because there's so much water volume in them. Whereas the tanks, I definitely have to fill more often.
Is it better to have shade on the pond if possible? Like, can you strategically place it to get more shade during the day, or does that not matter?
To me, it doesn't matter too much. It'd probably matter more if we were further south where it gets super hot. But like for up here, to me, in a way, I actually don't mind if they're out in the open because it's just keeping that water warmer for the deer.
Oh, forgot about the water temp.
What is the temp that you're trying to get? Like, is there a goal?
I mean, to me, if you were probably anywhere from 70, 80 degrees is probably like the hot spot. Because when you start getting like 90,
warm water.
I mean, it's no different. It starts getting too hot where you're actually gonna have more issues. But sometimes that's inevitable. Like the hottest temps I've seen in a pond, like surface temps, were like 105. And as in some of those stretches where it's like we had those really hot spells in July and August, and those are instances where actually like our deep us down, we wouldn't be able to treat because of fish kills and things that way.
Sorry, say that again. Your internet cut out there.
Oh, so like the hottest ones I've ever seen is like over 100 degrees, and then nothing uses it. Right, it's like nothing touches it at all, and those are.
Now you locked up completely. One more time.
What?
You guys got me?
No, we lost you.
Now I have you. Yeah.
All right, perfect. No, I was just saying, like if it gets too hot, nothing's going to use it. So, and those are instances where like the pond color will help.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And so if your pond does get too hot, is there any negative effects that has on your water as far as any negative bacteria or?
Yeah. So as water temperature goes up, bacteria growth obviously increases too. So we want to make sure that's when like I'm really adding a lot of bacteria and enzymes to compete with the other bad bacteria. So yeah, if it starts getting, once again, 90 plus, you're going to start getting more issues more rapidly, more growth more rapidly. Even like in normal ponds, we'll see more algae, we'll see more weeds, all those things will take off. So that's where you have to be more of a steward of your water to really start adding.
When it gets super hot.
Would you treat it before a heat up, like during a heat up, or post, or all the above?
I would get it in there beforehand.
Okay.
The other thing too is I always add products after major rainfalls as well. Just because it's a spot where you get all the runoff, so you got to treat that runoff that comes in.
So Lee, like during the middle of the summer, your recommendation to Lee, Zach, was to be adding 6 bags of ice to his water hole every Tuesday. That's your recommendation, right? 6 bags of ice.
I will literally go out there with a thermometer, a little meat temp, and check the temp.
Yeah. 6 bags of ice.
And the biggest thing, and that's why like water volume is so important. because it takes a long time to actually heat up water. So like that's why I do like having more of the natural ponds, line ponds, because it doesn't heat up as fast as a little tiny tub does. And then also adding the pond color and things that way to reflect the UV. But so the more volume water, the slower that temperature increase is going to be.
So what I heard you say, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Zach, for the guy who's not going to like really do the due diligence and take the time to do the care, he might be better suited with a 100-gallon tank and making sure that he rakes that out every year and cleans that sucker out versus digging a pond that could lead to, if he doesn't do the maintenance that is required for that, it might not be the right thing for him to do, because he could lead to having all sorts of issues after 3 years, creating muck and actually creating the EHD problem and image and all that stuff. So
to me, it's like no different than the guy that doesn't have the time to take care of a timber stand, right? That has buckthorn or autumn olive, or he goes and cuts it and it's all resuckers and becomes an issue. If you don't have the time to really do the job, to me, that's when, do the tanks, do the earth ponds, things that way. You can pull out, you can pressure wash, you can clean and manage it that way. Because, it's one of those things. If you let it go and Mother Nature grabs a hold of it because you didn't have the time to really take care of it, you could have caused the actual issue on your own property.
How many gallons do those earth ponds hold?
The biggest one right now, which I know they have a bigger one coming out, but the biggest one right now is like 240 gallons. The next one down is 120, and then they have an 80 and a 50.
How, like that, the big one, how actually deep is that?
I want to say it's 13 inches deep.
I was gonna say, I thought they were pretty shallow. So they're just big.
They're honestly easy enough. Like I did a couple for my clients last year where I couldn't get my tractor to it, and I just shoveled them in. So they're shallow enough where it's not a burden to dig them in, which is, I think is nice. Whereas like you try to dig in like one of those Rubbermaid ones, they're pretty deep. They're like 2 feet deep.
They're horrible.
Yeah. So with those ponds, the earth ponds, are they recommending that you get that below grade, or is that, I don't know their recommendation for install?
They're kind of neat how they build them. So there's a lip on the outside. So like and this is at least what I did. I didn't get them below grade, but I got it where that lip set on the surface.
Edge of grade. Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought, is that there was part of their EHD control too. So like it doesn't overflow into the mud and make mud on the shoreline if it does recede. But
now like one point it kind of makes that not work is like if you're trying to use the runoff aspect, right? If you're trying to, because now you just pushed all that water away. So that's where you would have to get it below grade. And like I said, it's just a matter of then you just got to make sure there's more upkeep on it. That's what it boils down to.
See, that's the thing, is what it kind of deters me from actually establishing a pond. Unlike you, like you'll live here forever and be able to go uptake it. But like I would be nervous about like once, let's say I moved on from this piece of property and then just going like not being taken care of anymore and being a negative effect to the property. So that's kind of why I do like the thought of a tub or an earth pond on my location.
Sure.
And a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, even same with leases, right? Like a lot of guys have hunting leases. To me, that's where you do the tubs and stuff like that way. Because if you ever lose that lease, you can pull it out. Like case in point, an outfitter I worked with in Kansas just lost a couple of his leases where we did line ponds. He's like, "Can I pull those out?" I'm like, "Absolutely not. You're gonna rip the liner." So I'm like, they're there forever now. So to me, that's where like the earth ponds, tubs, kiddie pools, you name it, though they're better for hunting leases as well.
Kiddie pool.
Dude, what was there was one dude that like cut 55-gallon drums in half and put those all over.
I've seen that.
Woods. And so,
that one is a pet peeve of mine, because you're only getting 22 and a half gallons of water. Like, come on.
Yeah.
That's nothing.
You just put a bunch of them next to each other.
I've have one that, it's surprisingly small, but it was under the shade of a huge tree, and like there wasn't even runoff there. That little tank, dude. I mean, this year was the first year in a long time that I've seen. I don't know how, it's a really deep one, so I don't know. It's not very big, but it's really, really deep. So I don't know how many gallons it actually is. But this was the first year that I saw this fall that it got low. Otherwise, it normally doesn't get low at all. And I actually watched a buck use both feet and step down into it to get to the water. I'd never seen him do that before because normally it's right at the top of it. But that's all changing now because that's no longer shade because they cut down all the trees.
Yeah.
So,
and that tub got ran over by the...
Did it?
Probably.
Oh, I thought you saw that. I was like, oh, come on.
That's fine. You're digging a pond anyways.
Yeah, I think I am. That just gives me something to do because I don't have anything to do.
Right. So let's... I want to talk about water. Let's say besides your normal like ponds or water drinking areas for deer, let's talk about water delegation throughout their property. And do you work with a lot of landowners on saying like you try to pool water in certain areas to get different plant species to grow in this area and or filter this way, or do you work with any of your clients on that?
As far as kind of like how to move the water around the property.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I will
especially
work
in hill
with
country.
Right. Yeah. So, and that was one of the parts like with my career was dealing with like stormwater retention, so bringing on and actually trying to figure out how are we going to actually manage this water so we're not making gully washers, we're not getting erosion issues. I just worked with a client in Southwest Wisconsin where he's in bluff country. And through his farm field, he was every single year having to fix a big drainage ditch that was created by runoff. Mm-hmm. So like for his plan, we're actually making a series of stormwater retention ponds to slow that water down. He gets the benefit of it being for deer now too, but we're actually treating that water where we can now hold the water, slow it down, go into another a ditch system, goes to another pond, slows it down even further, and eventually actually gets rid of all the erosion. But like we see that more so like in Iowa, Missouri has really bad issues with that, where they have giant ravines made from constant runoff issues. So that's where like putting in, go back to the riparian zone. So like we'll go a riparian buffer zone of prairie. So the prairie will slow down that runoff, and we'll go into these different swales and maybe you have to stone them so you don't have these big cutouts of topsoil. So absolutely, I'll work with clients to actually manage water flow on a property.
I see a big push right now for planting, I forgot the tree species, but planting trees in or along ditches to help not only help with runoff, but also filter that water as it gets downstream into, let's say if it is running into a trout stream, those trees will suck up the nitrogen through the water before it gets to the actual trout stream.
Yeah, I mean, to me, trees aren't really the best. So, and case in point, so like when I can really see, I've dealt with a lot of lakes and rivers, and trees are the one that you'll see over time. There's enough wave action and stream movement that they'll erode away because it's such a big, intense root structure that eventually it just gets washed out, and before you know it, that whole tree fell over. So to me, it's no different than like prairie grasses having a 20-foot deep, thick root structure. That's the same as like sedges and rushes. I'd rather see aquatic plants be planted around these edges that have more of an established, smaller root system, but thicker, that they can't just be uplifted. So to me, I'd rather have that, or even some of these more shrub species, and then like a big tree species. So you get into like tag alder, for instance. Tag alder is a crazy network of roots. Yeah, that's not going to just get ripped up. So like I'd rather see shrubs and aquatic sedges and rushes put into a implementation like that.
Yeah, I think you mentioned this earlier, but it's like, so like if you have a wet spot on your area, are there any shrubs that you can, I'm just thinking right now of a willow that drinks a lot, so you can like potentially dry up an area. So is there any shrubs that can do that?
Yes. I mean, you get into like your dogwoods are pretty decent. Viburnum, winterberry is another great one.
I feel like the problem with those though is you have to put cages around them because the deer will just devour those before they even can do anything at all.
Right. Now like viburnum usually doesn't get as destroyed, so like viburnum's usually a little more protected. Winterberry, there's definitely the berries on it, but yeah, like your dogwoods are definitely one of those things. Like, man, if you just plant a dogwood and you think it's going to survive, no. Like I always laugh at I laughed at the big push years ago from like Jeff Sturgis when he was doing all that, and we talked about red orange dogwood. I'm like, it's cool, except for the deer are going to eat it all. So you better.
I mean, you have to have a giant caged area.
Yeah.
Right. So that to me is like viburnum is naturally deer resistant. Winterberry is somewhat deer tolerant. So like there's some of those other shrubs that at least you can get away with it a little bit more. Like we planted those around these different ponds, that stormwater ponds, knowing that the deer will still rub them, right? I mean, that's the only problem, is deer will still destroy if they can. So that's where like you do get more into like your tag alders. Tag alders are perfect to me, because let's be honest, they're pretty much bulletproof when it comes to deer.
Mm-hmm.
But then also like you start getting your willow species. There's a bunch of different willow species out there. Those are your biggest drinkers. I mean, that's a water wick. Like I always tell a story when people want to know how powerful a willow is for sucking up water. We had a stormwater pond, it was a half acre, and they had one giant weeping willow. I mean, cool tree species, but this willow was probably 4 or 5 feet around circumference, giant. When they cut that tree down, I don't know why they cut it, honestly. I still don't know why, because it was such a cool looking tree around this pond. That pond level raised a foot. I mean, that's wild. I mean, a foot of water,
if you want to get rid of a water area in your property, just plant a couple weeping willows.
A whole bunch of them, dude. They'll suck up.
Plant willows.
And what is it? I never can remember this term, but what is the type of plant that you can just cut the branch and stick it in the ground? What is that called? Zach, you know what this is.
Can't you do it with all the willows?
Right, but what is that term called?
You know what you're talking about.
Because it's called something. Because like willows, the red oaks or dogwoods, all of those.
That was gonna bother me.
I know Zach knows it.
You're talking about just taking a clipping and sticking it in the ground. Yeah, I do it every year with red oaks or dogwood, and
it's a type of tree.
There's a term. There's a term.
It's a term for those. I can't remember. Somebody will comment on it and say, "You guys, if you don't know what that is, you shouldn't be talking about." I'll tell you to Google it. I know you know I can't Google. Well, so like,
because the cool thing about that is like willows, and what people don't realize is like if you take willow roots, you can actually boil them, and you will get that natural enzyme out of the root system, and you can actually propagate other species because of that. So you soak your cuttings in that willow root water, and you can actually get other species to grow.
What do you mean by that?
Oh, boy, yeah, I have no idea what.
Yeah, so you take,
no clue. You just laugh like I'm like now we're making trees and pots.
Yeah,
in pots.
No, so yeah, if you go out and you cut, let's say young willows out, right? You get the roots, and you cut the roots out, put them on, take them out, clean them off, put them on the stove, and boil them in water. Save that water, and you put your new propagation cuttings into there. So like whether you're doing dogwood or you're trying to do other shrub species, but you put those cuttings and you soak them into that willow root water. And because that enzyme that causes those willows to grow just from a cutting, that'll actually be like your root accelerant, and it'll start growing roots on those new tree species because you added that enzyme to those root cuttings.
Wow.
Can you?
I learned that from an old school farmer.
So can you do that to like an oak stick? Like, are you saying like the willow, that enzyme would attach to an oak stick and cause it to produce roots? Potentially.
Yeah. So yes. So in theory, yes. I don't know how good it works on some species versus others, but in theory, yes.
Interesting.
It is interesting because so when you take those clippings, let's say from a willow, do you? Because I'm about to do this, and this is why I'm selfishly asking. I want to do a bunch of hybrid willows to, one, soak up a little bit of water in a wet area, but then also screen a plot from the road. Do you soak those clippings before you stick them in the ground?
I usually do, just to start getting them going, especially because some of the species will dry out a little bit. Like a dogwood themselves, like a dogwood will protect itself pretty well with the moisture. Like if you have like a little gap of when you're going to regrow them, definitely stick them in water just to keep them moist and ready to grow. But now when I go and do like willow cuttings or I do dogwood cuttings, I just go on Amazon, but like I buy an actual root starter and root hormone where I'll put that the bottom where I'm going to stick into the ground. I'll stick that into that root hormone and I'll plant them.
How long are you soaking them before you plant them? Because like I actually went on Amazon and got some hybrid willow clippings that are being sent to me. And so I haven't really researched like when I should be sticking them in the ground or how long I should soak them before I do that.
Yeah, I mean, so like with willows, you can soak them to the point where the roots will start. I mean, so it really doesn't matter. Like if you want to get legitimately where the roots are already there and then you spade them in, you can do that. So to me, it's just make sure they're soaking in between that time period of you not planting them to planting them.
If you soak them for too long, Lee, what will happen is you'll actually see the roots all start, and you can't just plunge them in the ground anymore, because now you're going to push the roots back up and all that stuff. So it's like, I would just make sure that, I don't know, there's probably somebody that could tell you like the actual squishiness of it. Like if you get it and it's super dried out, I put them in there a little bit longer, but I probably wouldn't let them go like days.
When around here can you actually stick them in the ground? Probably like
it depends on the species, because some of them they can handle just going in as long as you can stick it in the ground. Like I've kind of the rule of thumb that I've heard, Zach maybe can speak to this, but if you can actually physically stick it into the ground, it's fine, because a lot of that wetter ground and all that kind of stuff isn't as frozen as your just normal ground per se and all that kind of stuff, because it's a little bit warmer temperature and all that stuff. So it really doesn't matter as long as you can physically get it in there without like reefing it in there, then you're probably good. So,
yeah, I would agree with that. And the other thing too is like knowing when the cuttings are made. Like I have some guys that they'll start doing cuttings in a month from now, right? Well, that tree might already start to be leafing out. So you're actually taking cuttings off a tree that's not dormant anymore,
right?
So that's another important thing: is get your cuttings when the tree's dormant. Don't wait till it's starting to leaf out. But yeah, like if you're starting to shove that and it's like you're trying to go through frost, it's not a great time to be doing your cuttings.
Yeah. Cool. Neat.
So quick touch on, we touched on this a little bit, but your EHD fence, did I say that correctly?
Yep.
So how does that exactly work?
Yeah, so it's a very holistic approach, right? So what we're doing with EHD fence is, and this is just through all my research I've done of the midge, is the midge itself is really only in existence because the food chain has been destroyed and it's living in impaired water systems. So as I was researching the midge, what I found is, for one, the midge's main predators require high water quality to survive. So dragonflies, different aquatic beetles, frogs, all these things need high water quality to survive. If there's no high water quality, they're gone from the system. They're going to leave. Frog will honestly be able to smell water from over a mile away. So it'll leave a system to go to a better high water quality. So what we're doing with two of the components, catapult and live water, which is bacteria and enzymes, is we're restoring water quality that's more preferred for these top level food predators of the midge. So we're bringing back the actual food chain. That's one aspect of it. Plus what's cool is when you start improving that water quality and bringing back like the dragonflies and frogs and all that, you also bring in bats and birds. Well, what do bats and birds do? Well, birds are feeding all day long on insects, and bats are feeding all night long. So they're feeding now on the adult midge. That's one really quick summary of part of the program. The other part of it is we have a sediment reducing bacteria. That's the pellet in the program. And what we're doing with that is actually reducing organic sediment, which in a drought condition becomes the mud flats where they lay their eggs. So if we can get rid of the mud flats, well, now we just got rid of obviously the egg laying zone, the breeding zone. So we got rid of the predator, using predators in a restored food chain, we get rid of the adults. By getting rid of the mud flats and the muck layers, we get rid of the eggs and larva sites. So just through actually restoring ecosystem health, we're able to get rid of the midge without going in there with a super harmful insecticide or something that way that isn't realistic and killing everything. We're just restoring what Mother Nature already intended to be there. So the best example I can bring of it is when you look at a lake or pond and you just have bluegills in it, right? There's no bass, there's no pike, muskie, whatever it might be. Well, what happens? Those bluegills will overtake the entire system, right? They drown it all with all these little tiny bluegills. Well, the same thing's happened to the midge. Is if the midge is present in this impaired water system and there is no predators there, what's going to happen? It's going to proliferate. It's going to be everywhere. So we want to get rid of that by restoring that. So kind of some of the research I've done on it so far. So the demuck product, the sediment reducing bacteria product. So I have one case study that I did where I reduced the organic muck in one pond by 7.21 inches in one season. So if you have 10 stories, a 10-story midge apartment, and you get rid of 7.2 of them, It's a lot less spots for that midge to actually breed. Then the other part of it is just the nutrient side of it. Like we talked about that being a limiting nutrient. So in one of my case studies, I was able to reduce the phosphorus, which is your main limiting nutrient of growth, by 95% in the system using live water and catapult. And then lastly, I talked about this food chain, right? All right, we got to restore this food chain through improving water quality. So by using the EHD fence system, we were able to increase the beneficial insects and invertebrates by 130% in an ecosystem. Wow. So literally what we're doing is what I did for my whole career for 20 years is taking the impaired water, bringing it back to life, restoring food chain health, which is basic biology 101. And from there, we can get rid of this midge that loves impaired water, tolerates high salinity, and pretty much will take over every cattle pond you see because nothing else can grow and thrive there. And those are the areas that when you go around, guess what? It's all that's there. There is no life there. And you guys being trout fishermen, I mean, you can kind of think of this. Trout don't exist in areas that there's no life. Trout need high water quality. No different than this. So like as water quality is destroyed, and I think of like our own state, Wisconsin, like we lost 50% of our brook trout habitat already. It's because of water quality issues. But now you have more mosquito issues, you have more tick issues, you have all these other insects that are thriving because the predators are gone.
Nice.
And who doesn't love to watch dragonflies?
Right.
I love dragonflies.
I love the bullfrogs in Kentucky. They're probably my favorite.
Big.
Oh, dude. Like when we sit on the porch, dude, and every once in a while you just like, my kids are like, was that a cow? And I'm like, no, buddy, that was a frog. We live in Michigan. We normally don't hear those, but that was a frog. You know, it's awesome. So I just realized your last name, dude. It's like, so one of our guys on our team shares your last name, and that's not a very common last name. Do you know Stuart Haas? You know Stuart Haas or no?
I've heard the name. The name.
All right.
Not related.
Okay.
I was gonna say, wow.
Are we gonna? Zach? Do we get to hang out in Wisconsin? Are you going to what's
the open
open
season?
season?
Yeah.
Are you gonna be there? Sweet.
Yeah, I'll be there. I'm actually doing seminars, and I'll have my booth for Creek Bottom Land Management there.
Sweet.
So I'll be there all weekend. Absolutely.
Awesome. So yeah, just where we're going to be next, and yeah, give a little plug for yourself.
We're gonna be in Iowa. Are you gonna be in Iowa too?
Oh yeah, you'll be Iowa.
Yep. So I'll be at. Yes, I'm going to be at the Iowa Deer Classic, the Ohio Open Season, and Wisconsin Open Season.
Sweet.
So we'll basically see you in the next.
We'll see you in a couple days, and then we'll see you next weekend, and the next weekend after that, Zach. It'll be fun. Yeah. It's going to be
I'll be actually doing EHD seminars at Iowa and Ohio, so that'll be
cool.
Good to get that education out.
What hall and what time for that? EHD.
I don't know. I got to figure out my hall still. You know, it's only a week away, and I don't know what hall I'm in, but I know it's 3:30.
I don't even know where I am right now.
Is.
Do I have two shoes on? Do I have pants on? Yeah, I do. All right. You're good, Zach. It's all good. But if you want to check out Zach, he's going to be at Iowa Deer Classic this weekend. That is coming up. And so we'll be there as well, goofing off and having a good time. But yeah, man. So yeah, anything else that you want to tell everybody where to find you and all that fun stuff?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much any social media, right? I mean, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. You can find me Creek Bottom Land Management or EHD Fence. I'm on both of those, but then also my website's creekbottomlandmgmt.com.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Cool, man.
And I see you're getting summoned by the little mistress behind you there.
Someone, right? Someone snuck in on you.
Your boss has entered the room.
Boss is coming in.
Yep. So yeah, we'll let you. We'll let you go.
Took the dog to the groomers, so
Nice.
I'm on dad duty.
Nice.
Yep, I hear you. Well, greatly appreciate it, and honestly, I learned a lot. And I'm thinking of like the YouTube thumbnail right now is gonna be like Water Boy. Your water sucks.
Yeah. And then my picture.
And then
a picture of my picture.
Yes.
The abstract drawing.
That might get flagged.
I mean, that might be a problem. They might think that's something bad.
Yeah.
Awesome, Zach.
Appreciate it, Zach. And we'll see you this weekend. And highly suggest anybody that wants to reach out to them and make your water better for your deer.
Yeah. Let's go.
Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Appreciate it, guys.
See you.